Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! As the sun dipped below the horizon, a solitary figure stood in the vast, quiet gymnasium, where the last rays of daylight struggled against the hum of artificial illumination. The air, heavy with the day's fading warmth, carried an eerie stillness, a stark contrast to the usual boisterous energy that reverberated through the school's veins. Barrett Matthews, weathered by time's relentless march, found himself transfixed at the heart of the hardwood-floored arena, his chest tightening with anticipation. His grasp tightened on the delicate fabric folded neatly in his hands, a vibrant reminder of Westfield High's spirit. The cheerleading uniform, a masterpiece of crimson and white threads, shimmered under the fluorescent glare, a silent contrast to the muted silence around him. This solemn moment felt like a sacred ritual, a secret shared between Barrett and the absentee students who once filled these halls with life. But it wasn't until 3 weeks ago, during a rare vulnerable moment over coffee in the teacher's lounge, that he'd confessed the truth he'd carried his entire life. The weight of the uniform in his hands felt simultaneously terrifying and like coming home. Barrett glanced at the gymnasium doors, locked, as he'd made sure twice already, and then at the locker room where his navy track pants and gray Westfield High t-shirt waited on a bench. Now or never, he whispered to the empty space. The men's locker room smelled of industrial cleaner and the faint ghost of adolescent sweat. Barrett changed quickly, his fingers trembling as he pulled the crimson top over his head. The material stretched across his chest, snugger than he was used to, but not uncomfortable. The pleated skirt settled around his waist, the hem stopping just above his knees. He'd shaved his legs that morning. For swimming. He'd told his reflection in the bathroom mirror, a flimsy excuse even to his own ears. Now, he was grateful for the smooth skin beneath the skirt. There were no pom-poms, no complete transformation, but standing there in the uniform, Barrett felt something long dormant inside him finally take a full breath. Stepping back into the gymnasium, he caught his reflection in the distant wall of mirrors installed for the dance classes. The man staring back at him looked both foreign and intimately familiar, a contradiction wrapped in crimson and white. Barrett walked to the center of the court, his footsteps echoing. He remembered the routines he'd watched the cheerleading squad practice hundreds of times, moves he'd privately memorized while pretending to be focused on setting up equipment for his next class. He began with a simple high kick, then another. His form was surprisingly good. Years of demonstrating proper athletic technique to students had kept him in excellent shape. Soon, he was attempting a basic cheer sequence, his body moving with a natural rhythm that had never emerged during the obligatory staff dance at school functions. 5, 6, 7, 8. He counted under his breath, executing a turn that sent the skirt twirling around his thighs. For the first time in 42 years, Barrett felt right in his own skin. Not just right, alive, authentic. The sensation was so overwhelming that he didn't immediately register the sound of the gymnasium doors opening. Coach Matthews? The voice, young, surprised, froze Barrett mid-kick. His heart, which had been soaring seconds before, plummeted to his stomach. 3 seniors from the basketball team stood in the doorway, gym bags over their shoulders. Marcus Wilson, team captain, Darius Jones, point guard, Trevor Michaels, center, all staring at their gym teacher in a cheerleading uniform. Barrett's mind raced through possible explanations. A bet? A demonstration? Nothing believable formed. He started, but his voice failed him. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Barrett watched emotions cross the young men's faces. Confusion, shock, and something else he couldn't identify. Marcus stepped forward first.
"We forgot our playbooks in the locker room."
His voice was carefully neutral.
"Sorry to interrupt, Coach."
Barrett nodded stiffly, acutely aware of the skirt, the top, everything that was wrong in their eyes, but had felt so right in his. Barrett gestured vaguely toward the locker room, preparing for humiliation, for the story to spread through the school by morning. Trevor shifted uncomfortably.
"Coach, we don't—" "It's not what it looks like,"
Barrett said automatically, the lie bitter on his tongue because it was exactly what it looked like. Darius, always the quietest of the three, surprised everyone.
"Does it matter what it looks like?"
he asked.
"Coach has been teaching us about respect since freshman year, about being true to yourself."
He looked directly at Barrett.
"Seems like that should go both ways."
The simplicity of the statement, coming from this 18-year-old who had struggled with anger management when he first joined the team, left Barrett speechless. Marcus nodded slowly.
"We'll get our books and go."
He paused, then added,
"Whatever this is, Coach, it's your business."
The three disappeared into the locker room, leaving Barrett frozen in place, the aftermath of adrenaline making his limbs shake. When they emerged minutes later, playbooks in hand, they nodded respectfully and left without another word. Barrett sank to the floor, the pleated skirt pooling around him. The encounter had lasted less than 5 minutes, but had shattered the carefully constructed walls he'd built around this part of himself. He waited for shame to flood him. Instead, after the initial shock, he felt strangely relieved. Seen in a way he had never allowed himself to be seen before. He changed back into his regular clothes, folded the uniform with reverent care, and placed it in his gym bag to return to Diane. As he drove home to his modest one-bedroom apartment, Barrett knew something fundamental had shifted. The secret was out, at least to those 3 students. The question now was what he would do about it. The following morning, Barrett arrived at school earlier than usual, stomach knotted with anxiety. He'd barely slept, mind replaying the moment of discovery and imagining worst-case scenarios. Would the boys have told everyone? Would there be snickering students, disapproving colleagues, concerned calls from parents? The halls were still quiet when he slipped into Diane's office and placed the neatly folded uniform on her desk with a simple note. "Thank you. We should talk." Diane found him in the equipment room, methodically inflating basketballs that didn't need inflating. "So," she said, closing the door behind her. She wore her usual tracksuit, auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "Rough night?" Barrett set down the pressure gauge.
"The Wilson kid and 2 others walked in on me."
He couldn't bring himself to elaborate. Diane's eyes widened. "Oh, Barrett, what happened?" He recounted the brief exchange, still marveling at the maturity the boys had shown.
"They were kind about it, but I don't know what happens next."
Diane perched on a stack of gymnastics mats. "What do you want to happen next?" The question hung in the air. Barrett had spent a lifetime not allowing himself to consider that question.
"I don't know,"
he admitted, finally.
"For years, I've had these feelings. This sense that the person I am inside doesn't match what everyone sees. Yesterday, wearing that uniform, was the first time things felt aligned.
Diane nodded thoughtfully. Have you ever considered that you might be transgender, Barrett? The word landed like a key in a lock he hadn't known existed. He'd heard the term, of course, but had always kept discussions professional when the topic arose with students or in faculty meetings. He'd never applied it to himself, not consciously.
I don't know,
he said again, but uncertainty was already giving way to recognition. There are resources, Diane said gently. People you could talk to. And for what it's worth, I've known you for 10 years. I care about you as a person, not just as Barrett the gym teacher. The first bell rang, signaling the start of the school day. Barrett took a deep breath.
I need to think. But thank you, Diane, for everything.
The day passed in a blur of whistleblowing and demonstrations of proper volleyball technique. Barrett watched the students closely, particularly the 3 seniors who now possessed knowledge that could upend his career. But there were no whispers, no unusual stares. During 6th period, when Marcus's class filed in, the team captain gave him a small nod of acknowledgement, nothing more. Days turned into weeks. Barrett returned the uniform, but found himself researching quietly in the evenings. Transgender experiences, gender dysphoria, transition options. Words that gave shape to feelings he'd carried his entire life. He ordered clothing online, simple women's jeans and blouses that he wore only in his apartment, looking at his reflection and seeing glimpses of someone he was beginning to recognize as his true self. 1 month after the gymnasium incident, Barrett requested a meeting with Principal Harriman. Eleanor Harriman had been running Westfield High for nearly 20 years, her practical approach and unwavering support of her staff making her both respected and liked. "What can I do for you, Barrett?" she asked, gesturing for him to take a seat in her office. Barrett had rehearsed this conversation dozens of times, but now that the moment had arrived, his carefully prepared words evaporated.
I need to tell you something about myself,
he began, voice steadier than he felt.
Something I've been coming to terms with.
Over the next half hour, Barrett explained his journey, the decades of feeling disconnected from his assigned gender, the incident in the gymnasium, and his subsequent self-discovery.
I believe I'm transgender,
he said, the words still new on his tongue.
And I've decided to transition, to live as the woman I am inside.
Principal Harriman listened without interruption, her expression thoughtful. When Barrett finished, she leaned forward. "Thank you for trusting me with this," she said simply. "What do you need from me and the school to support you?" The question was so straightforward, so accepting, that Barrett felt tears threaten. He'd prepared for resistance, for complications. "I'd like to begin presenting as female at work," he said. "I've chosen a name. Eliza. It was my grandmother's."
Eliza,
Principal Harriman repeated, nodding.
"It suits you."
She outlined practical considerations, informing staff, addressing student questions, updating records, with the same efficiency she brought to curriculum changes or budget discussions. "We'll need to communicate this clearly and supportively. Would you prefer to address the faculty yourself, or would you like me to prepare them?" "Could we do it together?" Barrett asked. "I want to answer questions directly, but having your support would mean a lot. Of course, we'll schedule a faculty meeting for next week. As for the students, I'd like to continue teaching." Barrett, now beginning to think of herself as Eliza, said firmly, "I'm still the same teacher, with the same qualifications and commitment." Principal Harriman agreed, and they developed a plan for a school-wide announcement, with counselors available for any students who had questions or concerns.
There will be challenges,
The principal warned.
Not everyone will understand immediately, but Westfield prides itself on inclusion, and that includes you, Eliza.
The name sent a wave of rightness through her that confirmed she was on the correct path, difficult though it might be. The faculty meeting came first. Eliza wore women's slacks and a simple crimson blouse. School colors had never felt more appropriate. Her hair, always kept in a short, practical cut, was the same, but she'd begun growing it out. She'd practiced minimal makeup with Diane's guidance, but had opted for just tinted moisturizer and mascara for this first professional appearance. The reaction from her colleagues was mixed but predominantly supportive. The younger teachers immediately adopted her new name and pronouns. Some of the older faculty members looked confused but nodded respectfully. Only Vernon Meeks, the aging history teacher known for his conservative views, openly frowned. "You're still the same person who beat me at the faculty basketball tournament last year," Diane said loudly as the meeting concluded, drawing appreciative laughter and breaking the tension. The student announcement came next. Principal Harriman addressed the school during morning announcements, introducing Ms. Eliza Matthews, formerly known to you as Coach Matthews, and emphasizing respect for her identity. The counseling staff held informational sessions for students who had questions about transgender identity. The first day as Eliza was terrifying. She wore a modest knee-length skirt in navy blue and a white blouse, clothes that felt both professional and authentically her. Her auburn hair, though still short, was styled more femininely. She'd practiced her voice, working to find a register that felt natural without being affected. Students stared, of course. There were whispers, a few snickers from the back of classes, but there were also surprising moments of acceptance. "Nice outfit, Ms. Matthews," said Emma Chen, a junior varsity basketball player with a genuine smile. "The whistle still matches your blouse," observed Ty Washington, a freshman who had struggled in gym class until Eliza had worked with him on coordination exercises. Marcus, who had first discovered her secret, approached after his class. "Just wanted to say," he said awkwardly, "that my cousin's transgender. He went the other way. Born a girl, now he's a guy. It was rough for him at first, but he's doing great now. If any of the younger kids give you trouble, the team has your back." These moments of grace carried Eliza through the inevitable difficulties. The parent who demanded her child be placed in a different gym class, the whispered comments she pretended not to hear, the occasional deliberate use of her former name by students testing boundaries. 3 months into her transition, with hormone therapy beginning to softly reshape her face and body, Eliza was supervising afternoon gym when she noticed a commotion on the bleachers. A group of freshman boys were huddled, laughing, one of them holding a phone. She recognized the cruel edge to their amusement. She'd been monitoring bullying behavior long enough to know it when she saw it. "Henderson, Rodriguez, Phillips, what's so interesting?" she called, approaching the group. The boys, startled, quickly trying to hide the phone. Too late. Eliza had glimpsed what they were looking at, a manipulated photo of her, her face crudely pasted onto an exaggeratedly feminine body in a cheerleading uniform, with derogatory text beneath. "Hand it over," she said, keeping her voice calm, despite the hurt and anger coursing through her. Reluctantly, Kevin Henderson surrendered the phone. Eliza looked at the image more directly, forcing herself not to react to the cruel caricature. "Office, now, all 3 of you." In Principal Harriman's office, the boys stared at the floor as Eliza explained what she'd found. The phone was confiscated, parents were called, and consequences were assigned. Detention and an educational assignment on the impact of cyberbullying and discrimination. After the boys had been dismissed, Principal Harriman turned to Eliza.
Are you all right?
Eliza sighed, the adrenaline fading into a dull ache.
I knew there would be days like this. You're handling it with remarkable grace,
the principal observed.
And for what it's worth, the negative reactions have been far fewer than we anticipated.
It was true. For every incident of disrespect, there had been multiple instances of support. From the faculty bringing her a care package of women's toiletries and cosmetics, to students adapting to her new name with minimal prompting, to the cheerleading squad leaving a crimson and white bow on her desk with a note reading, "Honorary Squad Member." "It helps that I'm not doing this alone," Eliza acknowledged. "I never expected such a network." That network expanded in unexpected ways. When a local news outlet picked up the story of Westfield High's transgender gym teacher, presented as a human interest piece on workplace transition, Eliza received emails from educators across the state. Some were transgender themselves, sharing their experiences and advice. Others were allies seeking guidance on supporting students or colleagues in their own schools. Diane encouraged her to speak at an educational conference, where Eliza shared her story and the school's approach to supporting her transition. The positive response led to invitations to consult with other districts on inclusive policies. "You've become an accidental activist," Diane teased one afternoon as they graded fitness assessments together. Eliza brushed a strand of auburn hair, now reaching her shoulders, behind her ear. "I'm just living my life authentically. If that helps someone else do the same, all the better." She had come to embrace the public aspect of her transition, recognizing that her position as an educator gave her a platform to foster understanding. But she maintained clear boundaries between her public role and private journey. The physical changes of hormone therapy, the consultation with surgeons about future procedures, the legal process of changing her name officially, these remained personal milestones, shared only with close friends like Diane. 1 year into her transition, Eliza stood in the gymnasium where her journey had begun. The space looked different now, decorated with streamers and balloon arches for the junior prom. As a faculty chaperone, she wore a modest evening dress in deep burgundy, her now shoulder-length auburn hair styled in soft waves. Her makeup was understated, but skillfully applied, highlighting features that had softened with hormone therapy. Principal Harriman approached, offering a cup of punch. "Quite a difference from last year's prom, isn't it?" Eliza nodded, surveying the students dancing and socializing. Many of them now knew her only as Ms. Matthews, the transition ancient history in the accelerated timeline of high school memory. "I can't believe how much has changed," she admitted. "A year ago, I was terrified of being discovered. Now you're just you," Principal Harriman completed the thought. "And a damn good teacher, which is what matters most." Across the gymnasium, Eliza caught sight of Marcus in a rented tuxedo, now a freshman in college home for the weekend and attending as a guest of his still-enrolled girlfriend. He noticed her looking and raised his punch cup in a small salute. Eliza returned the gesture, grateful for the unexpected ally who had helped set her free with a simple act of respect. The music changed to something slower, and couples moved closer on the dance floor. Eliza watched them with a new understanding of herself and her place in the world. The journey wasn't over. Transition was a process, not a destination. But she stood firmly on her chosen path, finally at home in her own skin. 3 years after that pivotal moment in the gymnasium, Eliza Matthews stood before a full-length mirror in the faculty restroom, adjusting the crimson bow holding her auburn hair back from her face. Her features had continued to soften with ongoing hormone therapy, and careful attention to skincare had given her complexion a healthy glow. The navy dress she wore for today's special assembly fell just below her knees, professional but feminine. A knock at the door was followed by Diane's voice. "You ready? They're all waiting." Eliza took a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be." They walked together to the auditorium where the entire student body had gathered. On stage, Principal Harriman stood at the podium, flanked by several former students now in college, including Marcus Wilson, who had graduated 2 years earlier but had returned for this occasion.
"It is my great pleasure,"
Principal Harriman was saying as Eliza slipped into a seat at the side of the stage,
"to announce that our very own Ms. Eliza Matthews has been named Educator of the Year by the State Board of Education, specifically recognized for her work in creating inclusive athletic spaces for all students."
The applause was immediate and enthusiastic. Eliza felt a blush rise to her cheeks as she stood to approach the podium. Principal Harriman handed her a plaque, its surface catching the light from the stage. "Thank you," Eliza said, her voice clear and controlled, no longer the result of conscious effort, but now her natural tone. "This honor belongs to all of Westfield High. 3 years ago, I stood in our gymnasium, terrified of being discovered for who I truly was. Thanks to the compassion and support of colleagues like Ms. Stevens," she nodded toward Diane, "and the maturity of students like Mr. Wilson and his teammates," she acknowledged Marcus, who grinned, "I found the courage to live authentically." She paused, looking out at the sea of young faces. "Since then, we've worked together to make our athletic programs welcoming to everyone. We've revised policies to ensure transgender and non-conforming students can participate in ways that honor their identities. We've implemented education for coaches and teams throughout the district. And perhaps most importantly, we've demonstrated that being true to yourself doesn't limit your contributions. It enhances them." The renovated girls' locker room now included private changing areas. The athletic uniform options had been expanded to include more modest alternatives for students with religious or personal concerns. The language in the athletic handbook had been updated to be gender inclusive. These practical changes had benefited many students beyond those they were initially designed to accommodate. After the assembly, several students approached to congratulate her. Among them was Javier Morales, a sophomore who had struggled with severe anxiety about changing for gym class until Eliza implemented the private changing spaces.
"My little sister starts here next year,"
he told Eliza.
"She's really nervous about high school, but I told her Ms. Matthews' gym class is the best. You make everyone feel like they belong."
Later, as faculty gathered in the teacher's lounge for an impromptu celebration, Vernon Meeks, the history teacher who had initially been uncomfortable with Eliza's transition, approached with a cup of coffee.
"I owe you an apology,"
he said gruffly.
"I was wrong 3 years ago. You've been good for this school."
Eliza accepted both the coffee and the apology with grace. "Thank you, Vernon. That means a lot." After the celebration wound down, Eliza returned to the gymnasium, her domain, the space where everything had changed. Alone in the expansive room, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. The fear, the borrowed uniform, the moment of discovery that had felt like catastrophe but had become catalyst. Her phone buzzed with a text from Diane. "Dinner to celebrate? 7 p.m. at Antonio's?" Eliza smiled and texted back her agreement. As she gathered her things to leave, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the wall of mirrors. Auburn hair framing a face now naturally hers, navy dress flattering a figure shaped both by hormones and the athletic regimen she maintained, posture confident in a way Barrett Matthews had never managed despite years of coaching proper form. The gymnasium doors closed behind her with a satisfying thud, the sound echoing through the space where, 3 years earlier, a secret had been revealed and a life had begun to transform, not into something new, but into something true. Outside, the late afternoon sunlight cast long shadows across the parking lot. Eliza Matthews walked to her car with purpose, keys jingling in her hand, her award tucked safely in her bag. Tomorrow would bring new classes, new challenges, new opportunities to demonstrate that authenticity was not just personally fulfilling, but professionally valuable. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been medical appointments and legal hurdles, difficult conversations, and occasional setbacks. But standing here now, recognized not despite her identity, but in part because of how her journey had enhanced her teaching, Eliza felt a sense of completion, not an ending. Her story would continue to unfold in new and unexpected ways, but the chapter that had begun in fear had culminated in triumph, not just for her, but for every student who had learned from her example that being true to oneself was the greatest victory of all.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!